Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I have no idea what time it is where you guys live, so I figured why not? This is Woodworking is Bullshit, your favorite podcast about creativity, art, and design, and more recently, the philosophy of life. I'm your host, Paul Jasper, woodworker by day. Scientist by day.
Oh
my
career
God.
change.
Scientist by day, woodworker by night. And I'm joined by my two co-hosts who you know very well, Eric Curtis, full-time furniture maker and content creator, and Mary Tisai,
There it is, bringing it back.
UX designer by day, contemporary furniture heiress by night.
Heiress. I have not inherited anything.
The everything was a Freudian slip there. That was...
Yeah.
So today's episode is something that Mary was passionate about. And
I was going to say was.
Yeah.
She gave up her dreams.
or she's dead, one or the other.
Oh my God.
Only on the inside.
That's true.
So today's topic is, I would say, and I'm going to ask Mary this right off the bat. What can the iPhone teach us? Mary, why should we think of the iPhone as an example? What does it have to teach us? Tell us right now. Go.
Well, should we mention that the topic is industrial design?
Sure. What is
We never mentioned that yet.
We're coming to that. What is the iPhone?
Okay.
What is the iPhone? Tell me right now.
Why was the iPhone so important?
No.
Basically?
Like you're on a train, you're in an elevator, and someone saddles up to you uncomfortably and was like, "Hey, Mary, tell me why the iPhone's so important and why me as an artist cares."
That's such a good fucking question. That's the title of this episode, by the way. Why is the iPhone so important?
I mean, the iPhone is the example I always go to because it's the one that most people can relate to the most. Most people, I guess that's not true. A lot of people have an iPhone on their person all the time. They interact with it every single day.
Yeah, Paul.
The majority of the hours. But the iPhone was literally a landmark invention. It fundamentally changed how people interacted with technology. There was a design paradigm shift. Think of before the iPhone, it was all these cell phones with buttons. The touchscreen technology was interesting. It marked the beginning of the smartphone era, putting calculators, phone, camera, apps, everything into one surface that you interact with. And it also has a really lasting legacy because you can see this pivot where all other phone companies were like, yeah, this is the goal that we want to move towards. Yes, Eric?
Yeah, but go ahead, Eric.
So I don't doubt any of what you just said because there is a very clear delineation in, I think, my mind and I think our culture of pre-iPhone and post-iPhone. I think that's a very clear mark. How important is the iPhone as an object versus how important was Steve Jobs as a salesperson or an ideas guy? How, you know?
It was a mix of both. I mean, he knew how to sell.
He sold
the
a dream.
product.
He sold a dream.
Guys,
he sold the dream and we're getting too philosophical.
Look, fuck the two of you. I'm still in the elevator. I'm still in the elevator, uncomfortably close to Mary, thinking to myself, look, I'm a fucking furniture maker and I make wooden objects. You have yet to convince me this applies to me. Tell me why it applies to me.
Okay. You're a furniture maker, which means that you create an object. I guess we'll just ignore Eric's question.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I think that was a great fucking question, but it's fine. We'll deal with Paul's query first.
Okay, you are creating objects. You have that in common. But have you created objects where the person that you're creating it for is millions of people who all have different taste, who all will interact with it differently, and if you look at the iPhone itself, it's designed beautifully in that it feels natural. That's something you have in common. Curves, obviously. People love the rounded feeling. If it's in your hand, it's experimented a few times with non-curves. Well, not always.
I was going to say, is it still curvy? The original iPhone was like a fucking pillow.
Yes, it was, and I think that there is definitely a balance. It is not hard 90 degrees, though. There is still very much a radius on that corner. It's just a little bit smaller, depending on which iPhone you have. But I think it's beautifully designed because is this the question? I don't even remember anymore.
Why
the
is it so important?
Wait, I'm trying to like right from the get-go, I'm trying to like we have a lot of listeners, right, who don't make things in the million of units. So
Yeah.
why do they care? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Can I reframe the question a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Because I don't think any of us on this podcast, maybe Mary, but certainly not you and I, Paul, or the majority of our listeners will ever make things for people in the millions. However, I do think there is like we could reimagine this to say, I haven't even ever made something for somebody who doesn't know me personally. Like there's never been a client who's paid me for my work who hasn't seen my work beforehand and say, I want something like that. Or I know this kid when I was younger and he works hard and I want him to build something because I want to support him. So what I think is interesting about the iPhone is the idea, not that there are millions of people who have different tastes, because fuck people's taste. Most of them are bad.
Oh my
God. But the idea of making something that has to be intuitive to a person that you know nothing about is an interesting way to think about why the iPhone is successful.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, one of the biggest lessons from design, industrial design, user design is user-centered design. The fact that you're focusing on the user experience. And like, I feel like one of the more valuable lessons that woodworkers can learn from industrial design is the importance on like focusing on that end user. The
I love
problem and the difference is that woodworkers usually know who that end user is, like Eric said. Industrial designers have to kind of think of the end user as this generic blob, and it has to be blobby enough to entertain people like us who are like, you know, more on the technological side, and also my parents who have no idea how any kind of computer or phone works. Like
Okay.
that is such a hard problem.
I'm trying
Okay.
so hard not to make a blob fat joke about how
I know
Paul
she
just
just
broke
called
his
us
chair.
all. My chair broke before the episode. My fat ass actually collapsed the chair. Yeah, it did. I'm not even joking. Okay, so I want to take a step back. Like I wanted to put Mary on the hot seat in a way like we didn't rehearse before the show. I wanted to like put her in a moment of like panic and be like, justify your position. But I want the listeners to know and like in general, you know, Mary has sort of brought to my attention like how big or if a challenge is designing for so many people, that so many blobs you don't know, right? You don't know who they are. You don't know what they want. And that's I never even considered that being like a huge design challenge. And I do think it has a lot to teach us. So understand my going after Mary at the front of the episode wasn't because I disagree. I was just trying to play the skeptic or you know, play a little devil's advocate up front.
I mean, that's the view
design.
that most people have, I would say, because a lot of, like, I'm going to say this over and over again, the saying in our field is that good design goes unnoticed. So most people should not notice the things that are well designed in their life, because otherwise it's going to be annoying and it's a bad design. Go ahead.
That also feels a little bit like designers patting themselves on the back for things that they don't get complimented for. You know, they're like, well, yeah, sure, nobody liked it, but that's because like good design should go unnoticed.
I 100% agree with that.
Touche, Eric. All right, so now that we have the panic-stricken portion of the episode where I'm attacking Mary to pretend we're in an elevator and comfortably close, let's come to the
Which
real.
has happened many times, by the way.
I'm gonna need that story later on in this episode.
Not with me per se, but with someone else, I assume. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So, all right. So let's start by saying today's episode is about industrial design and what it can teach us about our craft, our art, as an example. So, Mary, why don't I know everyone loves your defining things.
I get to define it,
Mary. Have at it. Define industrial
design. Oh my God.
Why? How have we not made a T-shirt that says, "Can you define that for me?" Yet?
That's so good.
Oh my God. Well, I'm going to try to keep it simple because I could go into length or whatever. But in layman's terms, industrial design is the design of physical things, typically smaller than a building, and typically produced in high volume.
Okay.
So it does things like I can go into more specifics, but in general, it does things like balance functionality, aesthetics, and mass production. The mass production being one of the things that makes it stand out from craftsmanship or artisanal craft. Yeah. So unlike purely artistic, what's the right word, endeavors, ID really combines like creative vision with technical knowledge, and it wants to create products that not only look good but are also practical and efficient and I guess manufacturable on a large scale.
Okay. Can I bring you back to something you said already? You talked about the I guess the 4 pillars of good industrial design, and you said them quickly, but I feel like I didn't want to lose track of them because they went by in an instant, but they're really important. You said aesthetics, so that's how it looks, right?
Yeah, I don't think did I say the 4 pillars yet?
Well, you did. Yeah, you said aesthetics, functionality, and mass production.
I didn't hear you say them either, Mary, so it's fine.
Well, they went by fast, and so Mary.
Okay, I did mention functionality, aesthetics, mass production. However, the main pillars of good industrial design are functionality, aesthetics, simplicity, and innovation.
Can you elaborate on each of those?
Can you define each and every one of those?
Yes, I can. So functionality, essentially, the thing has to work effectively. It prioritizes usability, ergonomics, durability. An example of this would be like OXO. Do you guys know like the OXO kitchen tools?
I do.
So they are kind of a landmark with an ID for functionality that feels and works really well. Second one, aesthetics. Yep, good.
Can I, as you're giving examples, given our audience, I'm curious if you can like name what might be your prototypical example in the industrial design field, but also name a woodworking example. Because like OXO, I don't know what the hell OXO is.
No, that's a good point. Okay, functionality. I might need your guys' help with this.
Well, you said ergonomics was the word that I latched onto, which is like chair design is a nightmare because of ergonomics.
Yes, that's true.
So like a well-designed chair, wood or no, is like that's a real challenge.
Yes, that's true.
Functionality, Eric. You mean what in our field is an excellent example of good functionality?
Yeah.
Something that prioritizes usability and ergonomics.
The cabinet behind you, Paul, like it serves a very specific function. You need to put shit inside a box, and it needs to be big enough to hold that shit.
I would say like a stool, maybe. There's a very definitive purpose for a stool.
There's very definitive heights for specific stools.
One that doesn't break like under my fat ass. Okay, go.
Yep. Okay. All right. We got there.
All right. Second one, aesthetics. So things like brand identity. This is where like emotional connection comes in a little bit. But one example, I guess, that bridges both ID and woodworking is like Eames chairs and Eames furniture.
Sure.
Like, you can recognize it because it's got a strong brand identity and it's a very specific aesthetic.
You know, Mary, that surprises me. When you said aesthetics, I immediately thought it looks beautiful. That's what I thought to myself. But you're saying brand identity.
Not necessarily, because again, people find different things beautiful that other people might not like. So
I see.
I at least correlate it to knowing who made it.
Wow.
So I like to that point. If you see an iPhone out in the wild, which obviously you do every day, like you can immediately recognize it as an iPhone. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on this, but like I see people's phones and what I do more than recognize it's an iPhone. That doesn't even clock for me, but I do identify it when it's not an iPhone, which in that case identifies a specific aesthetic. Yes, Paul, you have the fucking green text message, dog. That illuminates a specific aesthetic that I hadn't even considered, right? But it's very clear when a thing is like it's a different size or proportion, or maybe the lines are slightly different, whatever it is.
Wow,
Yeah,
Mary,
exactly.
that's
And
good.
there are brands that try to replicate the design of the iPhone, but there's always something that's off, and
Mm-hmm.
you can always tell.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
All
Third
right.
one
So,
is
yep.
simplicity.
Mm,
So clear. Okay, so simplicity, I will say it's very hard to design a simple object that works for
Mm.
people, for most
yeah.
people. So it needs to be intuitive, uncluttered, focus on essential elements. And there's a lot of things that fit this bill. The iPhone, we can say an idea is one of them. It is simple in its physical state. I won't speak for the software side because different systems and different, however people customize their iPhones, that can be a mess. But the physical product itself, it's a glass screen and that's all you interact with.
Ah,
And
that's
the
really
camera.
good.
The camera
Hmm.
makes it a little more difficult these days. But
Yeah.
yes.
It made
Trying to
like
think of
it made me think of a Tesla where it's just a single monitor is the whole dash, right?
Hmm.
yeah,
There's no gauges and all buttons and tweakers and knobs. It's like just
right.
a single black monitor. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah, so they really leaned into this pillar. I would that the Tesla is a very controversial design, I would say,
Mm.
Sure,
in
sure.
car design, but yeah, they really leaned into this and like try to go as simple as possible.
What is the simplicity of mass-produced woodworking objects or objects that like
IKEA.
Oh,
sorry?
IKEA flat pack stuff.
Oh, see, I was thinking about that as innovation.
Oh, it could
both.
be,
because
yeah.
It's
because
both.
because they did like for sure like we'll get into innovation obviously, but the idea of flat packing any piece of furniture that you could possibly think of and shipping it around the globe is wildly
Yeah.
innovative and they don't get enough credit for that.
It's so hard too.
Yeah, that's so and that's part of the reason why I was wondering if simplicity is the wrong
Mm,
category for that. But
yeah,
to your point about the iPhone, the interface is simple, but the all of the things that go behind that screen are not
yeah,
simple. Okay. All
exactly.
right. Fair.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what like the furniture equivalent of like simplicity would be.
Is it like the barn table? Like I don't know what it is.
um,
What about like the Noguchi table? Well, I don't know. This one's hard because simple can.
simplicity.
Yeah, simple can be difficult.
Yeah.
I'll give you IKEA. Like IKEA in the realm of simplicity took building furniture and made it accessible to people who don't even own a hammer
Yeah, exactly.
and who might not speak the same language as the manufacturers. Like they did it all in pictographs. Like
Yep.
so they simplified it to the point where you can't get simpler than that. In fairness,
I guess I see simplicity in woodworking or the art world as a piece actually is very complicated to make, but it looks so simple. And one
Mm.
of the
Mhm.
examples I think is like a divider system, because I do those all the time, divider systems,
Mm-hmm.
where all the tongues and grooves and mortises and tenons and
Yeah.
the miters, all of it's hidden, all of it. All of
Yep.
the joinery and nuts and bolts is all invisible. It looks so clean and so simple, yet none of it's simple in reality. I tend to think of simplicity like that, where it's like the final product looks so clean and so slick, but boy, it was not clean and slick getting there.
Yeah.
I like that.
Is it Mary? Tell me if I'm wrong here, but maybe is intuitive? Is that could that be a standard word for simplicity?
Yeah, that's part of it for sure.
Because I think that there are objects that like you interact with a thing in an intuitive way and you don't think about it. And maybe that is the simplicity of it. I can't think of an example mass produced in the woodworking world off the top of my head, but
Eric,
like,
think about your cabinets. Like when you have a cabinet or a box, it has to be intuitive how to open it,
sure.
right? And that comes to your design. Like if you don't know where to pull, like sometimes you change where the pull is on a cabinet door, and so that has to do with that simplicity or intuitiveness. Like something's got to guide your hand, and you just look at this thing you've never seen before, but
Yeah.
somehow
And
you
and
know
you
where
just
to
kind
open
of
it.
know. You just
Yeah,
kind of
you
know.
just know.
And that
Yeah.
and again, that speaks to the iPhone of like there's so many things where you could pick up a phone and you have to press a button on the side or a button on the top or whatever it is to like illuminate the screen. And whoever, I don't know when this started, but whoever came up with the idea of like, well, yeah, you just fucking tap the screen and that
Or you
illuminates,
just pick it up.
because that's the first thing that you
Yeah.
always do is you just go pop, 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 pop.
Yeah.
Yep.
And use your
Yeah.
hand and not a stylus, right?
Yeah.
Using
Yeah.
your fingers is super intuitive. All right.
Okay.
So, Mary, we have
All right.
aesthetics, which is not necessarily how good it looks, but almost more like branding, right? And
Mhm.
your brand identification, functionality, simplicity. And what's the last?
Last one is innovation. So things like, does the product push boundaries? Does it solve problems in new and creative ways? Do they use new materials, cutting edge tech, like rethinking methods? So one thing that I just thought of today, because I was using mine in the ID world, is the Dyson vacuum was pretty groundbreaking when it was first invented, because it's bagless technology. The cyclone system wasn't really a thing before, and it's portable and easy and very distinctive in its look. So
It
that
hits
is
all the
on the ID
points,
side.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I would agree with Eric. Like IKEA for sure pushed the innovation of flat pack furniture so well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Go ahead, Paul.
Well, so now that Mary Skoda introduced us to the 4 pillars of good industrial design, and Mary, you have convinced me hook, line, and sinker. Like I can see these pillars in the objects you're talking about. I can see them clearly. This is excellent. It's like, how did we get here? Do you want to just briefly tell us a little bit about the history? Like, how did we get to this point?
Yeah, sure. So industrial design really came in the like late 18th, early 19th century during the Industrial Revolution, essentially. So when advancements in manufacturing and machines allowed for the actual mass production of goods. So that was the beginning of it. It really took off by the 20th century, specifically with movements, or I guess schools like the Bauhaus, which emphasized what was it? The unity of like art, craft, and industry. So the Bauhaus, for those who don't know, is like a design school in Germany, founded in 1919. I used to know this, art history school. 1919,
That's
I
right.
think.
Yeah, 14 years, 1919 and 1933.
Yeah, by Walter Gropius. So it produced
What a
just
fucking
like
name.
I know. We're gonna skip over that. So there was a lot of really iconic designers that came out of it. People that you might recognize in the furniture world, like Charles and Ray Eames. Who else is there? Like Dieter Rams. Dieter Rams actually was a big name because he had like a less but better philosophy. So focusing on that like simplicity aspect that we were talking about, and like timeless design, quote unquote. Raymond Loewy, and yeah, so it has progressed to what it is today, and there's a lot of industrial design programs. What I love about ID is that there are trends that are so distinctive throughout time, and I love that it keeps developing. But you can also see the influence from the current trend of like where they got that influence from the past. So, yeah. Anyway, that was just
That's
a
cool.
very
No,
high level history.
Don't anyway. Geek the
Yeah.
fuck out. Like,
Yeah,
what
that's
do you?
great.
What I want examples. I want to know more about that shit.
I'm digging it.
Well, so when people talk about ID, they always talk about like the really famous names, but one name that a lot of people do not know, but is responsible for the iPhone and for a lot of the pieces or products that they interact with, is Johnny Ive, who was the chief design officer at Apple, and he was the main industrial designer. He created, and along with the team, the iMac, the iPod, the iPad, and the iPhone. So he is one of the
Christ,
most
what a
famous.
career.
I know he is one of the most famous ID industrial designers. He no longer works there. I think he left a couple years ago to start his own thing. Obviously, why not? But he is someone that I really admire. And if you just Google any of his interviews, the way he thinks through products and is able to see the future and the vision of this very simple product and like where it's going to go. He worked with Steve Jobs. The two of them worked really closely to develop this vision, and they marketed it really well. They built it really well and designed it. I very much
Wow.
admire him.
Mary, I'm both awestruck and jealous that I can't think of that at the same time. Go ahead, Eric.
I'm just genuinely curious how Apple's relationship with releasing new products and innovation, what that timeline looks like from this dude leaving the company. Because
What do you
now
mean?
I feel like we're all in, again, this is a layman's perspective, so correct me if the industrial design world feels differently, but I feel like we all see Apple now as a company that every 6 to 12 months releases a new product that's like, oh, you didn't fucking change a
Yes.
goddamn thing. You just want people to be excited about a thing. So when
Yes.
did that start? When did Mr. Tim Apple start releasing
Apple.
when did Mr. Apple start releasing bullshit updates like as new objects versus like when this dude left?
Yes, I love that you brought this up. So,
this is a thing.
Yes, a lot of people, this is like a huge critique of Apple right now. So people, depending on who you ask, it happened when Steve Jobs died. So
sure, I know a lot of people who feel like that, and that's kind of, I feel like, again, as a layman, I feel like that's the story I've been told.
Yeah, and I kind of buy into that. So it's hard to describe. I don't know much about Steve Jobs. I know that he pushed people real hard. He was kind of an asshole, but I think that really forces people to think outside the box. And that is what he was known for pushing people outside the box. And I think although it comes at a price, like that's where innovation can happen. It's not the only way, but it is the way that they worked. So Johnny Ive left, I don't remember exactly when, but it was a couple years after that. And I remember, if I recall correctly, he had started stepping down already. So I think the combination of those two, or maybe and also with Steve Wozniak, the combination of those leaders at the top was just such a good like chemistry. And then once they all started to step away or passed away, etc., yeah, it declined.
That's fascinating.
Is this a thing that is inevitable in industrial design? Like, is this, so you create an object, you create a vision, you refine that object over time, and you come up with, let's just for the sake of this example, say the iPhone was a perfect item, right? Like it's intuitive, everybody can use it. Somebody who doesn't speak English or has never seen a smartphone before can pick it up and figure it out in a matter of minutes. Perfect item. As time goes by and the people who have that creative vision and that creative genius go by the wayside, and people inevitably come into a successful business, because I'm equating successful industrial design with mass production and therefore reasonable profits.
Yeah.
So people come into a business, and then it seems like inevitably the quality of a product takes a fucking nosedive.
I mean,
so is that, I guess the thing that I'm wondering from an outsider's perspective is that the inevitability of just like human greed and it happens and there's no way around that? Or has there in the last 100 years been a shift in the way that industrial designers approach their work? Because I feel like, I could be wrong, this could just be anecdotal, but I feel like we all have that grandmother, that great aunt, that somebody who has objects from 40, 50, 60 years ago. And they're like, well, why would I ever get a new one? Like, it works.
Yep.
It's beautiful. It's done the job for 6 decades. Of course I don't need a new one. And so there was, it seems like mass-produced objects were held up on a pedestal of like, this is better than handmade because it is perfect by definition. It's flawless and without human error. Versus now we see industrial-made objects as like just absolute waste bullshit that is disposable. So has there been a shift over time in the philosophy and ideology of industrial designers, or is that just the inevitability of companies grow and then people try to maximize profits?
So really,
you're welcome. Question. Go to town.
Jesus Christ.
There's so many, because like as you were saying that, I kept thinking, yes, this and this. There's so many different paths I could take. So yes, to an extent, I would agree. Yes, that the quality of objects and products that are mass produced has gone downhill. In general, yeah, the quality, they always say like your grandma's stuff was always like better made, and sure, it probably was. It was. It's cheaper to create these days. It's easier to replace, and also companies create objects with planned obsolescence in mind so that they could keep making a profit. So
Mary,
the
can you
even
talk
iPhone,
more about that?
Yeah. So planned obsolescence is essentially how do you define it?
The
Planned
light bulb
obsolescence.
cartel.
Yeah. So if you want to talk about the beginning of it, but planned obsolescence is the lifespan of a product is only built for a couple of years so that it starts to break down and the consumer is forced to then buy the new version of it or a replacement of it so that that company can stay in business.
And this has been going on for a long time. Like the kind of famous example of this was the I don't remember which companies band together, but there were several companies in the early 20th century making light bulbs, and they had the ability to make light bulbs that were lasting like 2,000 to 3,000 hours roughly. And they basically all got together and they were like, well, this is bad for business. So we should set a standard where all light bulbs go out roughly around 1,000 hours because that will keep customers coming back. And that's where like the light bulb cartel was born. And then I think it was maybe 15 years ago, Maytag got sued because planned obsolescence is technically illegal, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and so Maytag, they found out that there was a certain thing, like some kind of breaker in their washers and dryers that would break down after a certain amount of hours of use, and they got sued and they lost the lawsuit. So like this is a thing that still fucking happens. This is very real.
Mean, even Apple is actually pretty famous for this because with their iPhone or with any of their products, there's something called the right to repair, where they did not allow third-party companies or
void all warranties, right?
Yeah, exactly. They did not allow you to actually repair your iPhone. You were forced to upgrade or, go to an Apple store, etc.
Is that in law in the United States, or is that? I feel like that was a European thing first.
I'm not sure. I don't know enough about it. I do think that it was overturned in the U.S. in the past few years, but I haven't looked into it.
In that we don't have the right to repair?
In that we do now have it.
Oh, okay.
It seems to be a ballot question in a lot of states. But anyway, Eric, you asked a multi-part, multi-generational question. And then you got us on some other fucking track before you gave Mary a chance to answer it.
You're the one who's supposed to fucking reel me in, dog. That's your role in the show.
He's a curious boy.
Bitch, that's what I'm trying to do right now. Okay? This is me fucking reeling your ass back in. So, Mary, were objects of higher quality in the past?
I love that service.
Like, what is this?
Vicky just handed you a fucking. What is that? What's in the beverage, dog?
Water, unfortunately. I already finished this
floating hand.
See this bottle of whiskey is empty. I'm like, can you bring me a water? Okay, back to it. So, Mary,
all right,
Mary.
So were objects actually of a higher quality back then?
Yes.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, I would argue. Well.
So, no, I'm genuinely asking because I feel like there are also things that we didn't know 50 years ago. Like, hey, guys, I don't know how to tell you this.
Okay.
Lead paint works fucking better. And you know why we don't use it? Because nobody wants fucking all of the issues that come around with lead paint. Okay. So, like, of course.
They were built. Go ahead,
Mary. Yeah, no,
I was going to say, products were built to last, at least.
Sure.
And they were built to the best ability of the time. Whereas these days, companies do not feel that guilt of cutting corners or using a cheaper material.
Okay, anecdote from my house today. Okay, Eric, what kind of stove do I have? Do you remember?
Oh, you got that bitch from like the 1920s.
Yeah.
That thing's a behemoth.
So it's like it's a
cast iron ceramic
1950s hot point stove, all push button.
Oh, she's a beaut, man.
I've repaired it one single time
really?
In the 20 years I've been in this house. The heating element cracked, and I bought a new heating element for $25 and squished it in there and like bent it to fit, and we're back at it. So don't tell me products from yesteryear don't last. They do. That stove has cooked for me
does.
for 20 years.
Does.
And you know what's broke on me today? My all plastic piece of shit dishwasher wouldn't open because the plastic latch broke for a second time because I've already
Plastic,
replaced
of course.
it. So it's like, you know, I really feel deeply this about like the quality of yesteryear versus the quality of today. I know, but today comes with new innovations that yesteryear didn't have. Like that stove is so simple, right? It's like you push a button and it's on or it's off. It's not that, you know, it's not.
In fairness, I bought my stove a year and a half ago, and like you push a button and it's on or it's off. So like, but you know, hey, that's from Home Depot.
I can't help it if you're cheap.
I guess. I guess
calling you a cheap bitch. Wow.
He's not wrong. Of the poorest person on this podcast, like I can say that I'm a cheap bitch.
Okay.
I will question where am I trying to go with this? I think you're exactly right in that the quality of that object is better, but to the point of innovation, like
it's worse. Yeah.
I wonder, like, if your electric bill is $100 and that's an electric stove from 1950, that thing's probably taken up $60 fucking of that. Like,
bitch,
it's
know.
not the efficiency of that is.
Okay.
And now we have twice as many people on the earth, or 3 times as many people.
So to be fair, yes, they were built with better quality materials and they lasted longer because it's all metal and it's all, you know, metal contacts. There's very little plastic, but the innovation is low, like you said, right? And there's one other point about and there's planned obsolescence today, and there wasn't in yesteryear. So I think those are the 3 main points. You know, better building materials, they hold up longer, lower innovation, but today we have planned obsolescence as a form of profit.
So to my original question that I loaded amongst 17 other questions to Mary, is that planned obsolescence something that industrial designers are asked to do in the design process? So like, as an industrial designer, if we set this on an island, somebody comes to you and they say, we want you to design a product. Is your goal to design the best possible product? Or is your goal to take into account all of the things that the company needs you to do, which is continue to make profit for them? So you need to make it as cheaply as possible and with planned obsolescence.
It's the latter, for sure. So that is definitely part of it.
I was really hopeful that you were going to tell me I was wrong.
No, it depends on the company, I guess. But for the most part, it's the latter. But in the more recent years, sustainability has become a required part of the conversation. But from my perspective, which is not necessarily always correct, but just from observation, it's a bullshit conversation just for the sake of... I mean, they just say try to make it sustainable, or like, what's the sustainability? That's not a thing.
You could make it sustainable if you wanted to. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's like, it's just this, we have to have the conversation about it to say that we've had the conversation, but also like make it cheaply. Okay. So, and that line varies per company and depending on, you know, who the leadership is, what the ethics are, etc. But yeah, sorry to be the bearer of bad news, guys.
Okay, well, on that fucking Debbie Downer note, can we... Oh, go ahead, Paul.
All right, so I want to bring this back to like what our listener base thinks about in their daily life. Like we had to sort of, I hope you bared with us, like we had to set the foundation of what industrial design's about, what are some of the issues, the bugaboos, the challenges, the successes, you know, like park that in your brain. But now... why does it matter to you? What are the steps of industrial design? And Mary, covered these like usability, user-centered focus, sustainability, materials.
When you say you, do you mean we as woodworkers?
Yeah, we as woodworkers, but we also have a lot of non-woodworkers who listen to the podcast.
Sure. As creative people who make things. People.
So user experience, user design, sustainability, materials, manufacturing, innovation. How do we incorporate these, or can you give us examples of how to incorporate this into craft or art?
Yeah, I mean, these are the two sides of me. Like, I work in a field of design that is quote unquote mass produced, although it's the software side. And then there's the woodworking side, which is heavily influenced by that. So the overlaps for me are, there's a few. So like I had mentioned before, user-centered design, focusing on like the end user. The second one, there's a few, I guess.
Wait, Mary, wait. Don't skip over that.
Yeah. That's
when
important, dog.
When you make it, are you saying when I make a table, I'm considering how people will interact with that table, where that table lives?
100%.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like
Can
a
we-
chair that's, oh, good.
Can we give good, bad examples of both? Like how good use case of tables and chairs, like you were about to say, but also like what happens when you get it just wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say like a chair that's like exquisitely crafted and beautiful, but uncomfortable to sit in.
Oh, all the chairs from the 1700s. Every fucking
Every
chair.
one of them. And why? Why is that?
They didn't give a shit, or they didn't want them as people
I don't
to
think
sit
they-
long.
I don't
know.
think
Well, I
it's
think
that.
it's because it was
What was
more
it?
considered a work of art in that
What was it,
functionality. It
Eric?
was more like presenting.
My understanding of those chairs is the overwhelming majority of them, the backs are at 90 degrees to the seat.
Yeah, they
and
are.
that's viciously uncomfortable. So any chair you sit in that's designed now will be somewhere between 98 and like 115 degrees in relation to the seat. And the seat will be something like 5 to 10 degrees slope to the floor. So the seats were parallel to the floor and the backs were 90 degrees. So it forces you to sit straight up. And nobody does that. Everybody slouches a little bit.
Okay, so you were suggesting that there was a reason why they did that back in the day.
Not so much. I think it was just undiscovered yet.
I thought you had a reason behind their having uncomfortable chairs.
My personal reason, like my personal thought, is that stems from throne rooms. So they were trying to make super elegant, like high end, high fashion, rich folk furniture.
Yep.
And thrones were 90 degrees to the seat, and the seat was straight up and down. Like it was just medieval design. So I think that's where it stems from, but that's just a personal theory.
Okay.
Also, most people were probably not, well, I don't know if this is true. I was going to say like maybe not sitting as long as people these days do, but
Mary,
that could be
a
it.
Fact. That's
could be
a
it.
fact.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, we've also all sat at the table where like we try to sit underneath it and the apron is just a little bit too wide.
Yeah.
And it's
Oh my
cheesy.
God.
So like these are where I will say this is where the industrial design information and knowledge comes into play when you're designing objects. There are
there's standards.
specific standards.
Mhm.
So the height of a table is 29 to 30 inches. If you go 28 and a half inches, it feels okay, but it feels weird. If you go 31 inches, it feels like you're a fucking child at Thanksgiving dinner. Like it's just weird how that height changes. And so same with the leg clearance under a table. If it's less than 26 inches, most people will hit their legs on there.
Mhm.
All right. So
yeah,
so
I
that's,
have a standards book that I rely
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
all right. So that's about like usability and the user experience of like sitting in a chair, sitting at a table. What about materials and manufacturing?
Well, I was going to say like understanding the manufacturing process is interesting. I have less experience in production work in the woodworking world, but I mean, I think that ID kind of emphasizes the importance of like efficiency within manufacturing. So if you are in the woodworking production line world, you could absolutely learn from that.
The question that comes into my mind about process is uniformity. I feel like that's where we're at a disadvantage as woodworkers.
That's why they use MDF and particle board.
And also this is why we color like furniture. This is why we use stains and dyes, is because it's easier to make a uniform color tabletop over a batch of 100 than if you were just making straight cherry tabletops. Every color would be slightly different.
Oh my God, that takes all the fun out of it. Oh,
But like this is the manufacturing processes. This is
It
why the cabinet behind you right now, Paul, is shit brown. Like it is what they did was they wanted it to be uniform. And so they made it they took old motor oil and they rubbed it all over that fucker.
I can't wait to tell my wife her cabinet is shit brown.
It's a healthy shit brown, in fairness.
So, all right. So, Mary, though, I'm specifically thinking along the lines of like, what can I learn? I want to learn about how I should be thinking in my next piece based on these lessons of industrial design. So materials and manufacturing, like if I'm making a run of 100 things, am I searching?
So
Yeah, go ahead.
designing joinery, that's easier to cut and assemble. It could save time and reduce waste,
So
material
you're
waste.
telling me to route dovetails. Got it.
So don't do hand cut dovetails. Do like some sort of jigged up machine thing, so it's always the same. It's really quick.
If you're going to be making a shit ton of them, yeah, absolutely. Unless you hate yourself. So, yeah, but also like things like like modular design, where components can be like easily swapped or replaced.
Oh, I've done that.
That could also add versatility.
I did that with my everyday trays. Every tray interior was different and swappable. And I did that as a design idea. You could just like take 6 screws out, replace the tray, and I would. That's a great point.
Did you feel like that was a successful design, not for you as the designer, but for the end user?
Yes, the people who own them. I sold a whole bunch. I kind of forgot who all has them. They've contacted me 2 years now later, and they're like, I use it every day. It sits here. This is how I use it. I love every bit of it. And I kind of forgot. And when I hear that, I'm like, wow, I guess I got it right with the usability for the end user.
And
Even
also,
though I don't own one.
The ability to like swap things out, like that also makes your work more accessible for a broader audience, if that's important to you.
Interesting.
If you're trying to sell something.
All right, Mary, how important is innovation if you're an artist? Do you think that's important? Or is that really only if you're doing 100, 1,000 units of something?
Innovation?
Well, that's one of the cornerstones, right, of industrial design. And I'm just trying to apply it to what we think about.
It depends who you ask. I mean, there's some people who are perfectly content with what they have, but then there's some woodworkers who I think that we are friends with, and this podcast is catered towards, who really like to push the boundaries, and they like to think of, and it doesn't have to be technological innovations, obviously. Like there's different ways that you can design a piece. There's different ways to approach something, and that maybe it encroaches on the art side. I don't know, TBD, but yes, I think it's important.
Now I'm trying to think of who you have in mind right now.
Innovation and technology. I guess this speaks to like CNC, lasers.
Is it
right?
Go ahead.
Different ways to accomplish things, like doing inlay. In the old days, inlays were always scribed by hand and inlaid with wood. These days, I've been taking epoxy and loading it with brass powder and like flowing that into a CNC cut pattern. That's innovation.
So what I'm hearing in the examples that you're giving, and what I'm thinking about the examples that you gave, Mary, earlier, of like the iPhone, for example, having a specific aesthetic, and maybe in part because of innovation. Is it innovating for the sake of innovating, or is it finding your voice? Like, how different are those things? Because you can find a voice in manufacturing. There are people with an aesthetic that create objects in wood at the scale of hundreds or thousands.
Well, Eric, hold on. When you say innovating to innovate, I don't know what you mean, but innovation usually solves a problem.
Okay, that's fair. I think that is the ideal definition, but people change things just for the sake of doing it differently.
You're saying
they label it innovation.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I don't really have a good answer to that. Like, I think it's both, to be honest. Like, there are, you can do both. Like, you could have it be your voice, but also that is kind of the new innovation. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that.
This is getting diffuse and like hard to put my finger on. So I'm gonna shut this fucking shit down.
If we were talking about technology wise, things like the Shaper Origin are absolutely like innovative new products in the field of woodworking. I don't want to speak to the design side, but the product side of tools and the kinds of tools that woodworkers work with, I would say that is extremely innovative.
So I want to formulate this question properly, and I don't know that I'm going to do
be
that.
10 questions.
It will.
Your next
It will.
15 questions.
Yeah, exactly. No, so when you say that, I'm thinking of Lee Nielsen, for example. Tom has not changed a lot about the designs that have been around for 100 years. And yet he has built a very successful business doing the things that have existed for a long period of time. Like, I don't know how much in this, I'm speaking from a point of ignorance as far as like metallurgy and production goes. I don't know how much innovating they're doing, and yet they are successful in this space.
I think they've done a lot of innovating based on the videos I've seen. Their
Go ahead. In what way?
I've seen CNC. I've seen like
Sure.
Like I've seen innovation on every step of the manufacturing process.
I'm not trying to shit on Lee
No,
Nielsen by any stretch of the imagination. I've been there for a number of years. I'm just curious. From an end user perspective, it doesn't seem like they've changed anything, and yet they are successful. So is that an aberration, or is there also a lane there for lack of a better way to phrase it, the carrying on of tradition?
The end product hasn't been innovated, but the way to get there has been highly innovated.
Okay.
I think that's what we're talking about. The end product is the same because it's pretty much at its maximum fitness. That plane does exactly what you want it to do in the way, like, I'm not sure you can improve it much.
Yeah, that's fair.
But how to get there can be vastly improved, and they've done that. And that's why they're around today. That's my answer.
Okay.
Yeah, it's also tricky because like their audience is like in comparison a very niche world of woodworking compared to larger companies like Apple or Dyson or whatever. So I do think there is a world in which you can stay in that lane. I mean, people buy older Stanleys because they were better quality, and tradition absolutely has a place, especially in the woodworking world, I will say.
Just my 2 cents, an old Stanley is not necessarily better than a Lee Nielsen.
No,
Lee Nielsen is fucking top-ass quality.
I meant
often a
compared to
lot
new
less.
Stanleys.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Compared to like new Stanleys.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Okay, Mary, bringing back to woodworking, 2 more questions before we switch gears into our second segment. How much industrial design principles, the 4 pillars, how often do you see them in the woodworking world? Do you see them routinely used by people, or is it super rare you notice it? Is this a rare bird, or is this something already going on?
The one that I notice the most is aesthetics. I think that it's really, people like to showcase their voice in like their pieces of furniture that they create. So you can look at something and be like, oh yeah, that was created by Eric. That was created by Paul. Like that brand identity is definitely something that's carried over. The other 3.
Wait, point. I think we're doing it unconsciously.
What? Oh, well, yeah, of course. But you want to make your own voice.
Yeah, but I never think, in the one case, the brand identity is a goal, and with me and Eric, it just percolates out of us naturally. We can't even help ourselves. So I feel like there's an intent there versus
I didn't love that phrasing.
Face was so good. I wish this was a visual format.
I used the word percolate
out of us.
I didn't say
how is first. Yeah, percolate was a perfectly acceptable word. He didn't say we're moist with our ideas. Like what?
Oh my god.
You're not supposed to say that word, Eric. Okay, so I just want to point that out. That in one case it's a directive, and the other case it just sort of happens because you're the one person making all your shit, and that's just what you like. Okay, so sorry, Mary, you see aesthetics. Is there something else you see, or are we missing an opportunity?
For sure.
Okay.
Functionality is probably the one that would like work with the most people, because what's the point of creating a piece of furniture that doesn't function unless it's like truly a piece of art that the point of it is not to function or whatever. But yeah, functionality, it has to work. It has to.
Do you think we're missing an opportunity here? Like if all of us went to industrial design school and all of us went through the classes and understood it as deeply as you do. Do you feel like there's a missed opportunity here for us to seize on?
Yeah, I think that learning about the different sides of how to create a product, an object, is really helpful. It's not always necessary, but I think that more I don't know, I'm gonna come off as like an education snob though.
No, please do. That's my favorite Mary.
Go for it, Mary.
No, I just think that the more you can educate yourself about the history and the way different designers approach problems is always a good thing. You can always learn from it.
Yeah. Well, you've certainly opened my eyes to industrial design as a field, totally. So I definitely want to give you props.
But you also, like, you knew some of the industrial standards before Mary opened your eyes to some of those things, right? Like, you knew a dining table was 30 inches tall. You knew a chair was 16 inches high.
I did, but Mary crystallized it as like, this is the formula of good industrial design, and this is why it's so hard.
That's fair.
And this is and she got me thinking, like, wow, that's really admirable. I used to think mass-produced stuff is kind of like garbage. Like, yeah. But she really opened my eyes to the fact that this represents an incredibly difficult design problem, and there's so much to be learned if you're the type of person who can crack these nuts.
No, I these nuts.
Oh my god, you guys, it's fucking children.
So anyway, your point is exactly right, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Mary. What? Oh, he's gone. He's toast.
I hate you both.
What I was trying to get at was I don't even fucking remember anymore. It's gone. These fucking nuts. No. Okay. All right. So the education of industrial design is really important, and I wasn't trying to say that she didn't illuminate those things for both of us to a larger degree, but there are standards that I think, especially when we're hobbyists or just coming into the trades, that we don't think about because we're just like, well, whatever, that's the industry, I'm making bespoke objects. But there's several hundred years of history as to why we've decided why a table is 30 inches tall, because it's the people have done that research and that work for you. So get a book of standards and consume the things that are useful to you. That's the point I'm trying to get at.
Good point.
Yeah,
and also D's nuts.
You're welcome. You're welcome to make a table that's not 30 inches tall, but people like familiarity and comfort.
Yeah,
so
they
if
do.
you're going to create something that is so far out of the box, like, sure, good luck selling it. Oh, if that is your goal to sell
you
it.
better make your chairs a lot taller.
Right. Like, again, like, I can't necessarily identify an iPhone, but I can identify what's not an iPhone. Similarly, if I sit at a
Paul's flipping the bird.
if I sit at a dining table that's 30 inches or 29 inches, I don't think about it. If I sit at one that's 32, I go, oh, this feels really weird.
Yeah.
Something is off about it.
Yes,
All
exactly. And that's what brings me back to my point of good design goes unnoticed because bad examples really stick out to you.
Sure.
Great point. No,
Okay.
I follow all that. Great point. Last question, Mary, before we switch gears away from industrial design. Does that hold art back? Do all these constraints about, this is what people like, this is what's normal, this is what's worked, this is, it's like constraint. Does that hold artistic discovery and exploration back?
I don't think so. Like, I think the point of art is creating one-of-a-kind pieces. And I just don't think that the two fields are related necessarily. I think they can learn from each other, but I don't think that they are in conflict.
See, I initially thought they were in conflict, that the more constraints you have, the less broad you can think. But you bring up a good point that maybe they're about different things that are not necessarily related.
And
I mean, they couldn't be more different in terms of, sorry, Eric, in terms of audience. Like, you are trying to please so many people with this kind of object and art, which is not always the case.
You're trying to please one person. Often.
It's also maybe more a reflection of yourself.
Oh, wow. Powerful, Mary. That's a great answer, by the way. Holy shit. Good answer. I like that.
If you fuck it up, it's a reflection of yourself. That's what I took away from that.
Yes, accurate.
All
You
right,
know what
Eric.
else is a reflection of ourselves?
I did not like that at all. Taking my deep answer.
And we can turn that
Making a joke.
we can turn that into that sweet cheddar, because we have another
Oh my
sponsor
God.
on this episode, which is yet again William T. Burkle of WTB Woodworking. I don't know if his middle initial is T, but I'm assuming that it is because the W and the B are there. What do you think his middle name is? Do you think it's
Tomato.
William
It's
Tomatillo
definitely
Burkle?
that.
It's absolutely that of WTB Woodworking, and you guys should go to his website,
Oh my God.
WTBwoodworking.com. He has all of the things, woodworking and lumber.
Eric, this is
No,
terrible.
guys, hey, William Theodore Burkle loves woodworking.
Theodore?
And he has Festool, he's got SawStop, he's got Fuji spray systems. And what else do you need to know about WTB Woodworking?
my
He
God.
does some kiln drying services from time to time, and custom CNC work, which is, I believe that stands for Christopher Numbers.
No.
No, it's cool, guy. I'm just out here on a fucking island. You watch me instead of engaging with this fucking ad read. It's great.
Eric, I asked you before the show if you want to review
said-
the ad read.
Yes, you said no. I'm just gonna do it.
Yes, Mr.
Hey, what
I'm
are we
just
doing
gonna
right
wing
now?
it.
What are we doing right now? We're doing a
I'm
fucking
just
ad
gonna
read.
I'm gonna fucking wing it, Mr.
William Trefon Burkle as WTB Woodworking, and you should support him because he's a wonderful human being. The end.
Oh my God.
He's never coming back, guys. He's
I'm
not
so
coming back for
sorry, bro.
another ad read.
Mary, I was talking to Eric earlier. I don't remember what day. And he's like, well, we have to, we can't do our Hallmark story again with Chaz and Jeff. What did you say? You said fucking Jeff and
I did
Chaz.
say Jeff and Chaz. I
And
was
I
close.
I
was close.
It's
Will
definitely
and
Chad.
Chad.
And Will. Yeah.
Hey, you know what? I was halfway. I was like a third of the way there.
Short-term
Chaz
memory, not your strongest.
and Jeff, Eric. God
Hey.
bless.
And William Tedefrin
Okay.
Burkle.
Tomato. Okay. Our second segment is going to be today. You're in the spirit of industrial design. What is your favorite and your least favorite mass-produced item that you own in your home? Okay, we're going to start with your favorite, and then we're going to
Something
bitch.
that just works, that isn't an issue. It just kind of does what it needs to do.
Who wants to go first? I'll go first. I already talked about it, but I'm gonna add to it. First of all, my 1950s hot point stove. People are like, "You cook on that?" It's got four compartments on the. So it's got 4 burners and 4 compartments on the front. And you say 4 compartments? What the hell? Usually an oven is just like one big compartment, right? It's got 4, and they're tiny. Only one is an oven. The other 3 are storage. And they're like, "How do you cook in there?" Dude, ain't no thing. I cook for 12 people, 14 people. I've cooked Thanksgiving in there. It's all about just making it work. And that thing is a workhorse. It never, ever breaks. One time in 20 years, I had to replace one part. Come on. That's
Real
amazing.
question. I mean, it is amazing, 100%. But real question, though. When you moved into that house and that stove was there, what was the learning curve on that stove?
It was low, but I'd be lying if I didn't say I had a panic attack when I first saw it.
Sure. So
I'm like, what?
I guess that's what I'm wondering about good design. I feel like good design now, like in air quotes, quote unquote, good design is kind of uniformity. Like you can go from one brand to the next and you kind of know how it's going to work. Whereas back then, like you got a whatever the fuck ceramic stove,
and you
that
got to
is.
learn it. And
you got to learn
Mhm.
it. And it takes a couple of tries, but then once you know it, and it always works.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's got about 50 different push buttons on the front of it.
What?
Yeah. There's
And
four
all of them are like worn away. You don't know
So
what
there-
button does
there-
what.
Oh, nothing's labeled anymore, Eric. There's 4 burners, right? There's left, front, and rear, right, front, and rear. And each burner has a bank of 6 switches where you push them for different heat levels. So it's
You
like
need to send me a
amazing.
picture of this.
it's like super fucking hot, kind of hot, not that hot. You know what I mean?
Oh my god, that is crazy.
But they don't break. I mean, all you do is you push it in and you turn it off with another button. And there's like buttons all over, and people are like, "What are all these buttons?" And I'm like, "Dude, it's not that hard. It's like pick your burner, find the bank of buttons, pick
Once
the button
you figure it out.
Okay,
Yeah,
my second favorite is something I bought with some money my mom gave me when I started college. She gave me $2,100 for my 21st birthday, and I spent it on a stereo and speakers. And I bought, of course, any dumb, college student spends their money like that. I bought a Klipsch brand speakers and an Onkyo receiver and an Onkyo CD player and tape player back in the day. All of it works today flawlessly. 20 something years later, never had a problem with it because I bought the highest quality I could get, electronics and the speakers. Man, we bump those speakers. The whole house is rattling all the time. And I was like, I had these since I was in college because it was just a different animal back then. They made things that didn't fail.
Yeah.
They didn't have planned obsolescence back then. It was the opposite.
In the 1910s when you were in college? Yeah, they hadn't invented that yet.
Bitch. Fuck you. It was the early 90s. Okay, your turn.
Okay, so I have 2 examples. Only because the first example, I'm not 1,000% sure that they were industrial, like mass produced. There is a small chance that they weren't. But I have cocktail glasses that were my great grandmother's, and they're lovely. Both of you have had drinks out of them. They're up on the top shelf of the bar. They've got this cobalt blue stem, and they're all the same form, and they all have the exact same etching, which is why I imagine that they are mass produced. But glass being glass, they have shifted over the 115, 120 years that they've been around, and so they're all like a little bit off, like perfectly perpendicular, or they're just like slightly fucked in the right kind of way.
I love
and
that.
And I keep expecting, like, at some point they're just going to get broken, by somebody. And that's fine because they get used and loved. And like part of the weirdness about them is what I love about them.
They were probably mass produced, but hand blown.
And that's, I don't know enough about glass to understand how that process works. It could be a thing where like when they were made, those people were like how we view our cult of woodworkers now of like, we're mass producing things, but they are handmade.
Is there a plenty on the bottom? So like a little bump, like
there is a hollow on the bottom.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So they probably were hand blown.
Okay. And that's why I'm like, I don't know. So my other example is I have a belt that literally several months ago broke it was just the stitching that broke. And this belt,
gaining some weight.
It burst at the seams. This belt,
he's not the one who broke his chair too.
I was trying to make you feel better.
I will say this: I found that belt in a lost and found bin in CYO in 7th grade, and I have worn it every single day since whatever year that was, 1997.
Every day, really?
Oh, that was my work belt. I wore it every single day. And the leather still works. The buckle still works. Everything about that still works. It's the stitching where the loop that holds the buckle on meets the main belt that gave way. And I still have it because I'm like, I'll repair it at some point. But like the belt is perfect. It's like 1/4 inch thick leather. You know, like it's worn through rain, and like you can see the spot that's worn away from where I put the tape measure for 15, 20 years. So like the thing just gets the job done. And I just need to repair the stitching.
So your great Grammy's glasses in your belt.
Yeah,
I love it.
Nice.
Mary?
Mine is less. Mine's like more ID focused, I guess. So like the one thing that came to my mind immediately of like what is a perfectly designed object is the Lego block. I think that it is so simple in its design, but it is so clear.
God damn, that's a good example.
Good
answer. It's immediate of like, it's got these specific holes. It fits into the other piece exactly like this. All right, guys.
Is it moist? Okay.
It's not moist, but it does hurt like a bitch when you step on it.
I feel that. Same.
But that's the first thing that comes to mind when I think of like a perfectly designed and simple item. And the next one I have is not perfectly designed or simple, but I just had to say it for nostalgia's sake, which I think nostalgia does have a part in this conversation that we didn't discuss.
Okay.
But I will never give up my clear N64 game controller.
Oh, yeah.
I loved the clear fad that went around in that period.
Yep.
I had the clear Game Boy, the game controller, like the clear furniture that's happening. But the N64 for me, like, I think it was just, it was like maybe a little over the top, but I loved it for being over the top.
I love it, Mary.
Okay.
Regarding your first answer, Mary, I have 2 suitcases of Legos from 1910 when I was a kid in my basement. I'm joking about the 1910, but I'm not joking about the 2 suitcases of my Legos from being a kid. I can't get rid of them. I keep hoping someone's going to
play
want
with them. Like kids will still play as much as like they love screens. It's something that they can figure out really well.
Okay, tell me that I'm wrong. Woodworking is Legos for adults. Tell me I'm wrong.
I've heard this and I can't disagree. I've also heard like people who love puzzles love woodworking. I love neither of those things. So I have nothing.
Okay,
I love both of those.
I can absolutely see the draw of Legos and I get it. I just never had the opportunity to fall in love with them. I was never
Eric, you would have
had them around when
loved
I was a
it.
kid.
You would have gone hook, line, and sinker for them. Trust me.
Yeah. I was too busy playing clear N64s.
I consider Legos my entryway into architecture.
Totally. All right.
Gateway drug. Okay.
What's an object you have in your house that was mass produced and you fucking hate? I'll go first. My laser printer. I hate it.
Interesting.
I was just looking at mine too.
Interesting.
I hate that motherfucker. I need it, but I hate it because every time,
like laser printer, like paper printer.
Yeah. I got a
you guys still have fucking printers?
I got a printer.
Dick, of course I do. It's a brother. I'm gonna tell you right now. I'm gonna out this fucking company.
They're definitely gonna listen to this.
It's a brother HLL 32700 CDW, bitch. Okay, so it's fine. They sell it to you for real cheap. Oh, Mary, talk about planned obsolescence. They sell it to you for super cheap. They're like, oh, laser printer, $150. By the way, the ink. Every time you refill the ink cartridges, $200.
It's so expensive.
What the fuck? Are you serious?
It's so expensive.
This is why I don't own a printer.
And it doesn't cost that much to produce. They drive the price up so much.
But that's all like each cartridge has to be like they all have chips in them now where they have to be programmed to their own printer, right?
Correct.
Fuck those guys.
So you have a choice. Do you buy a new printer every single time you need new ink, which is the same price pretty much as buying new ink cartridges, or do you buy cheap, shitty knockoff ink cartridges from China like I do, and then your printouts come out looking like you're messed up.
Like a fucking dot matrix.
Oh, it's terrible. Like my daughter asked me to print something for her, and she's like, what is this? Because like my face is like pink and it's like all the colors messed up because everything's wrong about it. And I'm like, I hate you, printer. I hate you. I hate that you're trying to make me spend $200 every time I need ink.
Can you just for funsies, like, I don't know what you're using a printer for, but like if you have to send paper goods to somebody, can you, just to see what would happen, get a dot matrix printer and like with the perforations where you have to peel off the side and just see how people would react?
Eric,
because that would be, I said something about a dot matrix. Mary's giving me the look like she doesn't know what a dot matrix printer is.
Mary, you know what a dot matrix printer is.
Do you not remember when we were like,
Mary?
when we were, she might be at the cutoff though, because you're what, 3-4 years younger than me?
I don't know. 91.
Yeah, so 4 years younger. So there were,
oh my God,
before we had like sheets, paper would come on a roll and it had the little like perforations on the side with the holes. And it would just, and so you, every time it would come out in a roll and you would have to tear the sheet and then tear the holes off the side. You don't remember this shit, do you?
Mm-mm.
It's
Eric,
we're gonna bring it back. Let's bring back dot matrix.
But you know, the best part of the dot matrix printers, it made like a beat. It was like,
Yep. Yeah.
What's this beatboxing printer?
and I was like, I was like banging along with my dot matrix printer.
I can't wait until I make a soundboard for this show, and that's gonna be our new opening theme song. It's just Paul beatboxing.
Okay, that's what I hate.
God.
Who's next?
All right. The thing that I hate the most in my house, and this is not even close to a struggle, is this. Not that table, but right behind it, there's a filing cabinet back there. And this is a filing cabinet that was at my mother's for like 20 years. And then when I was in college, I needed a filing cabinet to keep like my passport and social security card. So I took that thing, and I have hated it every fucking day since my early 20s. And I still have not replaced it because I can't bring myself to spend money on a filing cabinet when it still works.
Why do you hate it so much?
Because it's like the construction, it's all just like press board, like 1/4 inch, like low density fiberboard faced with like bullshit plastic oak. And the like everything, the runners are metal, and just everything about it is like the lowest quality bullshit that you could possibly have bought.
It's not a metal filing cabinet?
No, it's fake oak. And it's one of those things where it's like, it could not have possibly been cheaper to buy when my mother bought it, but it still is working. And a filing cabinet is a thing I give so few fucks about that it's like, why would I waste money on a filing cabinet?
Important note, if anyone's looking to rip off Eric's identity, his social security and passport are in this piece of shit.
Right there.
That's true. I have a key to your house, so I'll
have a key to my house. Many
everyone.
people have slept in this room, so like you guys know where it's at.
Shit, I missed opportunity.
That's fine. You passed out drunkenly on the couch, so.
Oh, good point.
Next
Mary,
week, Eric gets a lot of fraud emails.
Mary, what do you hate?
So my example is actually one that is constantly cited as good industrial design, and I disagree because it pisses me off, and that is a USB. People are like, oh, it's so intuitive. There's one side that is like as empty, and the other side, like the information gets read. Every time I put it into my computer, it's always the wrong one. And then the one after that, it's always the wrong one again after that. So I have to go back to the one previously, which somehow didn't work. It makes me so mad. I was like, why can't this just be like a USB-C where it's just a hole? Just give me the hole. I don't need to like align the whatever. All right, you guys need to stop making these faces. I guess I have to stop saying holes so much on this podcast.
You've talked about a lot of holes this episode, by the way.
She used the word
That's
moist.
what happens. I did not. You did.
I'm pretty sure you did. The record will show that you used the word moist.
You guys are gaslighting me hardcore.
I will second that USBs are entirely, and somehow I don't know how they did it, but it's always the wrong way the first time.
Always.
It's so
always.
annoying.
That's fair.
And then they wear out if you've plugged them too many times. If you've plugged the hole too many times, the hole wears out.
Yes,
that's
not
a
good.
common problem.
Oh my god, you guys.
Oh,
It's
Mary,
okay. Everybody
Mary.
stopped listening after the ad read, so
Mary.
nobody's listening to this part anyway.
Have you had it where you plug a device into one USB on your computer and it's fine, it recognizes? You plug it into a different USB on the same computer, it doesn't recognize.
Yes.
What
Yeah,
is
there's
that
something,
about?
There's something wrong with the port, I guess. I have no
want
idea,
to
but
I want to break shit when
it's
that
so
happens.
annoying.
Oh,
It's so
good.
annoying.
That's a great answer.
I try to think of the times where I like literally audibly yell like, "What the fuck?" Like, why?
Mary. That's the first time I think you've ever said fuck on this podcast, and I'm
That cannot
personally
be true.
offended.
Eric, we got to record Mary being like, "What the fuck?" and start the podcast.
Mary,
with that.
my mother listens to this podcast, Mary.
Okay.
She doesn't. There's no fucking way. She's made
You've
it an hour
you've
20
said
into this
much
podcast.
worse things than me.
Okay. Holy God. Okay,
Oh,
what a
man.
mess. We are at 1 hour and 20 minutes. I don't know.
Is this the longest that we've done?
Oh, yeah. It got out of hand today. I don't know what happened.
I
Mary's
love it.
like, let's do an
man.
episode on industrial design. And yeah, who knows what happened.
I've got a lot of passion. I'm sorry. But
Okay.
I guess I should. So I wanted to mention, Paul and Eric already know this, obviously, but to our listeners, this year in 2025, I'm looking at my schedule and it is so busy and so chaotic that I am going to be taking a step away, not completely from the podcast, but I just won't be able to record as frequently as possible. So I will absolutely still be a guest on and be able to annoy these two who are
not a guest.
endlessly make
Not a
fun
guest.
of me.
Oh,
That's
well,
true.
yes, that part. Not a guest. A consistent third chair, but
Yes.
when you have the space and time availability to be in the third chair.
Yes, and I expect every time they will make fun of me for asking for definitions. Obviously, it's fine, but at least I can. I'm predictable, but yeah, when I am on in the future, I will always be excited to hear everyone's reaction. So, yeah, it's
Excellent,
been
Mary.
a good year.
You have a lot going on, and I bet
Yeah.
it's going to be a relief to not constantly hear us two jokers being like, Mary, when can you record? Mary, when can you, how about Mary, right? Like, I just think, yeah, it makes sense, right? But it's not,
Yeah.
it's not goodbye. It's just like a little less on your plate. You don't have, I mean, we're going to have Mary on all the time, but it's just not going to be every single time. So it gives her a little flexibility. Yeah.
Yeah, don't worry, I'll still annoy you too.
Awesome.
You live 75 feet from my front door. Like, yes, you're going to still annoy me.
So,
and
what-
vice versa.
So what I think our plan is to have sort of a rotating third chair. Well, you know, you've probably you've seen Jen there, you've seen Conrad there, you've seen Jack there in the third chair, and maybe some others. So we'll see how
Mira
the year
Nakashima.
goes. Mira Nakashima. Oh my God,
That would be so amazing.
yeah, especially with the jokes we make, that will go well.
I didn't swear once in that episode. I don't
know,
think that I
was
can
so
do that
proud
again.
Of you. I'm so proud of you.
Oh God. Okay. A few more things before we go to the after show. The after show today is called "Shoulda, Woulda, Coulda, Didn't" because the three of us are like thinking about all the things we should be doing right now, and we just couldn't fucking pull it off. So we're going to talk about that in the after show. How you can get the after show is by subscribing to our Patreon. The link is in the show notes. If you don't mind, support us on Patreon. You have access to the video feed and the after show. So I
You
just
can
want to
see all of the times that Paul flipped us off during this episode.
Yes,
you
you can
subscribe
see
to
all
the Patreon.
and all the weird faces Mary makes at the two of us. Okay, I do want to say, if you enjoy this show, wow, my voice cracked there. If you enjoy this show and you want us to continue, growing and doing it and having more interesting conversations, we ask one thing. Simple. Tell your friends you like the show so that they listen to and they tell their friends, because we have no way to grow this other than you. So I just ask simply, please tell people you enjoy the show. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. From a logistical standpoint, just so folks know, like growing a podcast is not like growing on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or anything. There's no like For You page. I mean, there is, but nobody actually goes there. it's podcasts grow by word of mouth. So if you enjoy the show, tell somebody else to enjoy the show.
You mean we don't get that shiny silver play button? The one that you just
That
got?
Eric got.
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Two more things. I want to thank Michael at Gillette Woodworks for supporting us on Patreon. And finally, and I realize we've never done this, and a lot of podcasts do this. Where can people find you online if they want to see your work? Like, we never talk about that because we're so about the issues and the questions. And,
well,
we never
I'm also like how many people listen to this podcast who don't already follow one of the three of us?
Eric, just say it. So, Eric, where can people find you online if they want to see your feed, your work, your brand, everything?
You can Google onlyfeet.com. That's where E.N. Curtis across all platforms.
E.N. Curtis across all. Mary?
Wooductress, apparently.
Yes.
She's finally leaning into it. She's finally leaning in.
It just popped up on my Instagram this morning. I was like, "What is this?" And I was like, "Oh God, I forgot." but in reality, Kodamari Design on Instagram and I guess YouTube as well.
No, you can also follow Wooductress, the #1 erotic fan site of Mary Sai on the internet.
Oh, God.
I always forgot about that.
I'm so glad I asked this. And you can find me mostly on Instagram at Copper Pig Fine Woodworking and on my website, Copper Pig Woodworking. Apparently, it's not fine on my woodworking. On my website. Okay. So that's where you can find all of it. Because I you know what made me think of that is like, Eric, I saw people who were like following you and didn't follow me, and people following me and didn't follow you and Mary, or whatever. Sure. And we never talk about our pages ever because we're so into the question. So I just figured, hey, if you're looking for us, you know where to find us.
That's fair.
With that, Mary, thank you for bringing industrial design to the forefront of my brain. I appreciate how you've kind of reformed me about it. And this is why we do the podcast. Seriously, this is why we started the podcast, is to learn. Eric and I were sitting on my porch swing, I think it was, one day at my house. And I said, I've always thought about doing a podcast because like there's so many topics I'd like to talk about, not talk about to like lecture or whack off about what I know, but really learn about what other people know. Like, let's like open my mind. And I think this is a great example how Mary brought something to the table that I had never, ever thought about and totally opened up a new dimension for me.
We were all able to whack off about it.
And on that case, we're going to get out of here. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.